So kind of yesterday we saw the table space creation commands, different variations of those table space creation commands, and this is one of the commands that we have. Create table space, name of the table space, then the data file, name of the data file, and the size. This is like the basic minimum command that will be executed. Now when this file gets created, if you go and type the command ls-l or a dir command on DOS, you will see that this file gets created. The size of that file is 1 GB, and the owner of that file is a Unix user who is called as Oracle. There is a Unix user or the Windows user in that case. The person, not the person, the user account which we have used to start the Oracle software. And we'll see about those things a little later. But yes, you will see this file on your operating system. So this was what we saw kind of till yesterday. Now we have also seen the auto extend clause after this thing. Auto extend on. If you want to turn it on, by default it is off. And then we said next is, let's say, 100 MB and max size 3 GB. It means what? It means if 1 GB is full, then the file will automatically get increased in the size by 100 MB, so it will become 1.1 GB, and then it will again become 1.2, 1.3. Likewise, it can go up till 3 GB. So this is what we saw yesterday. So now today I want to go over some of the other points which are related to a table space. One more point that we discussed yesterday is the auto extend feature is not for the table space, it is for the data file. So this file will be growing, and because the file inside the table space grows, the table space will also grow. That is what the whole thing. So it could be like this, that a table space contains 2 data files, but only one data file is set to grow automatically, and the other one is not auto extendable on. That could happen. The final effect is that the table space will still grow because one file is growing. So the only point here is that auto extend is a feature of a data file and not of a table space. Okay, so this is what we kind of saw till yesterday. Now there are certain other things. The
one thing, what is the difference between this next 100 M max size? Okay, max size. Next 100 M and the resize.
And the resize. Resize is, let us say, if the original size of the file is 1 GB, you want to resize it to 1.5 GB, you can increase the size suddenly up to like 1.5 GB. At that moment, when we finish the command, the size is now 1.5. You can shrink it also, but as I said, you cannot shrink it below what is called the high water mark if the data is there. So that will happen at that moment. This will happen 1 to 1.1. That jump will happen only when required, only when the data needs to be added. Otherwise, it will not happen.
Okay, but both the commands work like you said.
No, yeah, both commands will work the same. Then why somebody would have auto extend on as opposed to increasing the size? There is one plus advantage of increasing the size as opposed to auto extending it when required. The advantage of increasing the size first is done usually when you know that tonight there is going to be a huge data loading program that will load and my size will require to be increased. So you pre-allocate that space of 1.5 GB so that the data loading becomes faster. If you don't do that, still the auto extend will grow the size slowly from 1.1 to 1.2 to 1. Finally it will become 1.5, but then this increase will happen maybe 4 times, and because of that there could be some slowness in the data loading. So if the space is pre-allocated, the data loading process becomes very fast. So many people from the performance point of view pre-allocate the space if they know how much of space requirement is going to be there. So that's the only difference there. Otherwise there is no difference. Many people like this because the space will be given only when you require. Okay, so this is the basic command for creating a table space. Now what are the different types of table spaces? There is some categorization that is usually done, and that categorization is basically based on something else. Extend, INT, extent management. This is called as extent management. Then there is a type of a table space, and then there is a status of a table space. These are not categories per se. Status. So table space will have a status. What are the statuses that a table space will have? A table space has a status of online and offline. What is the meaning of having a status which is online? Online means by default the status of a table space is online. It means people can come and they can do whatever activities with the data inside that table space, provided they have the privilege. Obviously, just because the table is there and the table space is online, that doesn't mean that you can select from that table. You have to have the privilege. So a table space online means it is operational. Table space offline means nobody can do anything with that. Why somebody would put the table space offline? We saw an example yesterday that if you want to rename a data file within a table space, you put the table space offline. You don't want somebody to even access any data. Your manager says that please bring down your entire financial applications, so that you don't want anybody to do anything. So instead of this is one kind of crude way of doing it, but yes, you can take the table space offline and you are guaranteed to make sure guaranteed to have no inserts, update, deletes whatsoever, or even access to any of the tables, even people log in. So nobody can do anything with the data. They will always get the answer that cannot access the table and all that. So that is online and offline. How do you take a table space online and offline? The command is again alter table space. Name of the table space, let us say TS1 online, and you can also type the word offline. So this is a simple command to take the table space online and offline. Now there is another status here which is read only. Read only status means the table space is online. The table space is online, and now I can see it. And it is only for read activity. So the two subcategories, you cannot categories, statuses of this online is that one is, or I should type it something like this. This is, let us say this is status A. Within online you can have read write, which is the default. So this is one and this is the second. Read only is the non-default. So how do you put a table space in the read only mode? You say again alter table space TS1 read only. Alter table space TS1 read only. And how can you change it back from read only to read write? Alter table space TS1 read write. So you just write these words and semicolon. That is what the table space status is. Now then there are categorizations of the table space. There is a categorization permanent. Permanent. Okay, permanent is a type of table space which is by default all table spaces are permanent except one which is temporary. Which one is that? Which is a temp table space. The table space which contains all those temporary activities, temporary tables for sorting, for PLSQL programs and all that stuff, those are stored inside a temporary table space. And the name of the temporary table space that we have seen yesterday, what table space names we saw yesterday? We saw that there is a table space whose name is system. Okay, this is a name, this will not change. Then there is another table space called as sysocs. Then we saw there's another table space which is required for the proper functioning of database, that is a temporary table space, and many people like to give the name of the temporary table space as temp, but it can be given anything. These two names, system and sysocs, is a permanent name. Temp, many times I call this as TMP, because I have done a lot of things on Unix. On Unix there is no TEMP. If you come from the Windows background, you will call it TEMP. That name could be anything, but now what is the difference now? This table space and this table space, these two table spaces are permanent table spaces, which means any object that gets created inside that table space, any extent for that object that gets created inside that table space will stay there permanently unless or until it is dropped. unless and until it is dropped. Once it is dropped, it will be gone. So these two are permanent table spaces. TMP or TMP, whatever name we will give, is a temporary table space. And then the third one is of category undo. A third name is of category undo. So there is a fourth table space that we have seen, which is of, we gave the name undo, but many people give name as undo TBS. Okay, whatever name they can give, they give that name. So this name and this name can be given anything, but the type of this undo TBS is undo. So this is undo table space, this is a temporary table space, and these two are permanent table spaces. These are the types. Now because of the types, their functionality is different. As I said, permanent is basically whatever is created, it stays there permanently. Temporary is it is gone whenever it is not required, when the data is committed. There are different types of temporary tables, and we will see those different types of temporary tables, that when you do a commit, suddenly data is gone because now you don't require it anymore. When you log out from your session, then the data is gone. So those are temporary tables. And undo is, only purpose of undo table space is to store the data for rollback purpose, and what we saw yesterday also, to give other users an ability to see the data which is not yet committed.
So when we log out, it is automatically committed?
Which one? This? The data? No, it depends on your software. Your SQL Plus software. Your SQL Plus software can be configured to do auto commit when you log out, or it can, it will say that you have to commit the data. It will not commit it. Your Toad software, Toad is another software, SQL Developer, all those software, they have the flags in their software that when you suddenly log out, what should happen with the uncommitted transaction, whether they should get committed automatically or not. There is a flag there. So finally, that means when you exit out, when you close the session by typing exit command, the commit command is fired or rollback command is fired, depending on what your flag is set to. So it is not always like when you log out, it will always do a commit. No, that is one thing. So these are the three types of table spaces there. One thing that I would like to say, system table space, SOX table space, maybe yesterday we saw fin data, these are all permanent table spaces. Temporary table space, a database can have more than one temporary table spaces. A database can have more than one temporary table spaces. One is called as temp1 maybe, another is called as temp2. And why a DBA would create multiple temporary table spaces in a database? The reason for that is, let us say you have a financial application, so you will create a table space called as a fin data. And then all the users who will be accessing fin data, you would like them to have their temporary table space as temp2. And maybe another application is the sales data, another application sales data. And all of those users who will be working with sales data table space or tables in the sales data table space, you would like them to use maybe temp1 as the temporary table space for their default activities. So that means, let us say there is a user called as U1 who has been assigned temp2 as the temporary table space. So whenever he goes and runs any queries, the temporary tables will be created in the temp2 table space for him. So that categorization is usually done by the DBA. So 100 users are sales guys, I'm going to create a separate temporary table space for them, so they will not interfere with the finance guys. Just segregation from the management point of view. So these are the things. Undo, okay, by the way, undo, there is only one undo table space in the entire database. You cannot have more than one undo table space in your database. Only one. And whatever information that you keep in undo will kind of remain there unless and until you type a command commit or rollback. No other things.
So when we create any table space, then
by default it is a permanent.
Then
yes.
Can we alter it to temporary?
We have to kind of altering it to temporary is not done. You create a table space as a temporary table space.
No, if you already created a table space and it, by default it is permanent, then can you alter that table space to?
What is the purpose of altering it to a temporary table space? You have good data in that. Okay, you have real data in that, and then that real data will be kind of lost. I mean, though no use of all that data. So you cannot alter it. You can create a brand new temporary table space, and that should be created as
And when
as the other
we
one.
create two temporary table spaces, then by default which table space is assigned?
Then actually we will see that there has to be, we have to specify that one of them is going to be the default temporary table space of all the users that will be created. See, last time we saw when we create a user, create user shaker, then identified by the password, then we say default table space maybe TS1. That default table space TS1 has to be permanent because he will be creating tables in that. Default table space TS1. You guys remember that command, create user? No. Let me. Okay, I'm gonna erase this thing now. So create user shaker. Then identified by, and that is the password there. And then default table space. Let us say TS1, and I put a semicolon there. Okay, I did not specify the temporary table space. So when I don't specify temporary table space for this user shaker, what happens when he types a order by clause? What happens when he has to create some temporary table spaces in his PLSQL programs? He will be given a temporary table space which is called as the default temporary table space of the database. Okay, so there is a difference between a default table space for a user. This is a permanent table space in which he will be creating tables, and there is a concept of a default temporary table space of the database. And what is the purpose of that? If any user who has not been assigned any temporary table space, use the default temporary table space of that database. Okay.
Which one is that?
Which one is that? And that is the perfect question. Out of these two or three, whichever you have, one of them is going to be default, not multiple. And how do you decide that? When you create a database, you can decide that. Now, okay, now you ask, so when you create a database, there is a big command called as create database. We'll see that maybe tomorrow, day after. And that is the time when you say that this TMP1 is going to be the default temporary table space. But little later on, let us say you want to change it. Then again, the command is alter database. We are altering the database. Alter database default temporary table space is TMP2 now. So from that point onward, you will be having a default temporary table space of TMP2 instead of whatever the original was. So what is the whole purpose of temp table space? Why are we discussing temp table space so much? Because temp table space provides you the disk space for the temporary activities, for temporary creation of tables in SQL, for temporary creation of tables or segments required for order by clause, sorting, all those things. Okay, then there is index creation. When you create an index, you know, there is a huge amount of activity that goes on behind the scenes. It's a sorting activity. So that sorting activity also requires temporary table space for storing the temporary results there before the index is created. So all those things will happen in the temporary table space, and that is why it is very important. Now that brings us to the next question. What should be the size of the temporary table space? When you are creating a temporary table space, what should be the size? And it's a kind of a trial and error thing, but usually if there is a lot of index creation that happens in your database, huge amount of data is there, 10 million rows, and you are going to create an index on one of the columns. Obviously the index is going to be also 1 million rows. We'll see what an index is. But index is basically a small table with the column on which we are indexing and the row ID. So that index creation will also require huge amount of temporary table space, and the size of the table space should be large enough in that situation. Okay, so that is how index creation will dictate the size of the temporary table space.
So then same is the scenario with default table space also. Now if you have multiple table spaces, not temporary table spaces, table spaces. If you have multiple table spaces, same is the scenario when we have to assign a default table space. We'll have to mention over there.
We have to mention. So if you have TS1, TS2, TS3, TS4, all those are permanent table spaces. Out of those 4 permanent table spaces, you are assigning one as a default for this user. One as a default for this user.
No, not
for the database.
For the database.
For the database, okay. For a database, the default table space is system. So system. So if this is not assigned, default table space TS1 is not assigned to the user, then that user will be creating a table. Where will that go? In the system table space. And then it's a very bad thing to create any table in the system table space. So this, even though it can be avoided, but this should always be done. This should always be done.
So if many users doing sorting operations, then
at the same time.
Same time. Or creating index at the same time. There is a possibility of this temporary table space.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. That this temporary table space will become full, and therefore your index creation will fail. And little later on, you come back and again run the same command, create index. It will work that time. It will always happen like that. Same thing for order by clause. If you are saying select star from employees, order by something, at that time sorting is happening behind the scenes. Sometimes because the temporary table space is too low, your select statement will fail. Because you have an order by clause. And what error message it will give you? It will give you unable to extend, or unable to allocate a temporary extent in the temporary table space. Unable to allocate a temp extent in the temporary table space. So that means that something is not enough for the sorting operation, for index building operation and whatnot. And as I said, either you can, as a DBA, you can increase the size of the temporary table space, or you can ask the developer to try after a certain time, and then the next time it will work. And this is, in fact, it happened with me. One of our users at the very beginning, it was not this problem, it was some other problem called a snapshot too old. We'll talk about that problem later. But it is something similar to the undo table space. Okay, if undo table space is not big enough and not properly sized, people will get an error message. And then little later on, they will try the same thing and it will work later on. So their users came and complained to me and our guys that Oracle is not a good product. And our question was, why are you saying so? Because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And literally it is like that in these situations, but you have to understand, yes, why it is working sometimes, because there is enough temporary table space, and why it is not going to work sometimes, because there is not enough temporary table space, and that keeps on changing. So yes, this is index creation will fail, your sorting will fail if you don't have enough temporary table space. And yesterday we saw about undo. Your delete will fail if there is not enough undo table space. That is what will happen on the table space side. Okay, so these are the three types of table spaces. One was the permanent, the next one was the temporary, and the third one was the undo. Okay, and now, okay, so we will stop, and then